Hi, I'm John Hornick. Welcome to lesson 82 of Chef's Apprentice, learning to cook like a pro, one small plate at a time. This lesson is chicken roulade with apricots, mushroom, and chèvre. Roulades are a great way to dress up chicken. They make a great presentation, and the combination of flavors is both surprising and complex. The first time I made this dish, I licked the plate. I have suggested a chèvre, apricot, and mushroom filling, but any savory filling will work. Let your imagination be your guide. Here you will learn to portion and pound chicken, make roulades, tie them with kitchen string, and brown them. The challenges of this dish are to pound the chicken to about 1/4 inch thickness without making holes and without it falling apart, and to roast the roulades and then brown them so that the chicken comes out moist, not dry. Techniques today are portioning chicken breasts, mincing, chopping, and slicing, seasoning and sautéing, deglazing and reducing, making a filling, pounding chicken, browning, roasting, and keeping warm, plating, and garnishing. So let's start cooking. Okay, let's talk about the mise en place for lesson 82. We're going to need some chicken breasts. Now, the description calls for 3 chicken breasts, which is enough to make roulades for 6 people. I'm only going to make for 4 people tonight, so I have 2 chicken breasts. But I have all the ingredients here, the same amount of ingredients shown in the description, so I'm just going to have a little bit more than I need. We'll also need to have about 4 ounces of Chevre goat cheese, and you can either use plain goat cheese or herbed goat cheese or even truffled goat cheese. And there's one brand, I don't know what brand it is, but it comes in these little logs. They're 4 ounces each. They're perfect size, good price too. This is just plain goat cheese. I have it in this bowl already, and I want it to be at room temperature when I start to work with it. It's easier to work with it that way. We'll also need to have about 1/3 of a cup of chopped dried apricots, about 2 tablespoons of garlic that have been minced, sweated, and then blotted of their oil. And just incidentally, this is a garlic called Chilean red, which we grew in our garden. Also need to have about 2 tablespoons of minced shallots, and about 1 tablespoon of chopped parsley. I have a lot more than that here, but we'll need just really probably less than, well, about a tablespoon. And then we'll need to have about 1 teaspoon of fresh thyme leaves. Try not to use any of the stem. Just pull the leaves off of the stems. Try to discard as much of the stem as you can. And this is probably like 1½ teaspoons, but I like thyme, so I use a little bit more of it. But 1 to 1½ teaspoons of thyme. Then you'll need to have about 6 ounces of mushrooms that have been thinly sliced. You can use any kind of mushroom you want. These are just regular white mushrooms. But remove the stems. Keep the stems to make mushroom stock. And so about 6 inches of thinly sliced mushrooms. Then you'll need about 2 tablespoons of sherry wine vinegar. I'm just going to eyeball that. We're not going to measure it. We'll need to have about 1/4 of a cup of chicken stock. Remember, we make our own stock in this course, and there's a bonus lesson on that. I've told you about that many times in many prior lessons, also about my website. There's probably a little bit more than, it's probably closer to 1/2 cup here. I'll probably only use about 1/4 of a cup. We'll eyeball that. Need to have some olive oil and kosher salt, peppermill for freshly ground black pepper, and then you'll need to have some arugula. This has already been washed and dried in the salad spinner. How much arugula do you need? We're using it just as a little bit of a bed underneath the roulades after they've been cooked and sliced. We're just going to put them on a little bed of arugula, so you don't need a lot of arugula. And then finally we'll need about 1 tablespoon of chopped chives. Okay, that's all of the ingredients we'll need. We'll break, come back, and I'll show you the equipment for lesson 82. Okay, let's talk about equipment. You need to have a cutting board and a chef's knife. You'll also need to have a slicing knife. You'll need to have a sauté pan, and what I'm going to do is use the same pan for 3 different things. We're going to use it for the for sweating the garlic, which I've already done. So what we have in the pan is some olive oil that's got some garlic flavor to it. Okay, I've removed all of the garlic so it doesn't burn. And then we'll also do the mushrooms in this pan, and then at the end we will brown the roulades in this pan. So we're going to be building flavor, insaporire, that Italian term. So we'll use the same pan for all 3 processes and we'll build flavor along the way. And we'll need a wooden spoon as well. Then we will also need to have a slotted spoon to get that garlic out of the pan after you've sweated it. You'll need to have a salad spinner so you can dry the arugula after you've washed it. You'll need to have a mixing bowl. I've already showed you this mixing bowl. It has the Chevre in it. And as I said, I'm bringing that to room temperature. We're going to mix the compound Chevre in this bowl, and we'll need a wooden spoon to do that. We'll also need to have some plastic food wrap. Now I have this 3,000 square foot roll, Kirkland brand, and you know I use a lot of it, so I buy large rolls of it. We'll need that when we pound out the chicken. And to pound the chicken, we'll need to have a meat pounder. Now some people they'll use like a small frying pan to be the meat pounder. Like for example, you could use a little wok like this to be the meat pounder, or a small frying pan. But it's actually better to have, more efficient I should say, it works better to have a meat pounder. We're going to use the flat side, not the side with the bumps in it. Then we'll need to have something to spread the goat cheese. I'm going to use a spreader. You could just use a knife. We'll need to have some kitchen twine, and this is a pretty big roll. It comes in smaller rolls. And we'll need to have some scissors to cut the twine, and a brush to brush the roulades with olive oil. Then you'll need to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. I'm not going to show that as a step. And then finally we'll need some tongs. I don't often say tongs are equipment that you need because you can often just use a fork or something like that. But kitchen tongs really come in handy for this particular preparation. And then finally we'll need to have a sheet pan, and that's what we're going to do the roasting on. Now you could do this on a sizzle plate if you're only doing 2 or 4. It's kind of hard to fit 6 onto a sizzle plate. And if you don't like cleaning a pan and you don't like wasting foil like I don't like to do, use a silpat mat. That's optional, but you put the silpat mat right down there in the half sheet pan and roast right on that, and these silpats are very easy to clean. Okay, that's all the equipment we need. We'll break, come back, and start cooking. Okay, the first thing on our prep list is to saute and season the mushrooms in about 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Now remember, this is the pan that we use to sweat the garlic, or that you use to sweat the garlic. And so there's already some olive oil in there. I just added some more. So there's roughly, 1 to 2 tablespoons. We're going to saute these mushrooms, season them lightly, and we want to get them to the point where they're starting to chirp. Okay, so we have some nice brown, nice brown on the mushrooms. Okay, now we're going to deglaze with about 2 tablespoons of sherry vinegar. We're just eyeballing that. Now, after this sherry vinegar evaporates, which it pretty much almost has, we want to get these mushrooms till they're back to, I always say almost dry. We want to go a little bit past that, so that there's no residual liquid left in the pan. And then we want to deglaze with the chicken stock, and we're going to use about 1/4 cup of that. Again, eyeballing it. And we want to have all of that evaporate as well. So it is pretty much, you still have a glistening of the mushrooms because they're wet, they're damp. But the pan itself, we want to cook out the chicken stock and the sherry vinegar. All right, here we have the mushrooms. We evaporated all of that chicken stock, and I just want to point out that this pan, we're going to use this to brown the roulades. Don't wash the pan. We're building up flavor, okay? All right, the next thing we want to do is to chop these mushrooms. And, they were already sliced, but we're going to be scattering them on the chicken and then rolling the chicken up, okay? So we just want to coarsely chop them. That's good, just like that, okay? And then we just want to hold these aside. It can be at room temperature until you are ready to roll the roulades. All right, now we're going to make the compound chèvre. I know we made a compound chèvre earlier lesson. I think it was lesson number 1. We might have made it after that as well. So we have the chèvre in the bowl here, and it's not quite at room temperature. It'd be easier if it were. And we're going to add the garlic, and we're going to add the shallots, and we're going to add about 1 tablespoon of parsley. Well, maybe a little bit less than that. You want to judge you don't want to overdo it. You don't want any particular ingredient to overpower the others, right? So I probably put in about 2 teaspoons. And then we have the thyme, and we're going to add a little bit of salt and some freshly ground black pepper. And then we're going to mix that up. Okay, now we're going to taste it and adjust the seasoning if it's needed. Okay, so we'll just take a little taste here. It's good. I'm not going to add anything more to it. Now we're going to cover this, keep it at room temperature until we are ready to make the roulades. Okay, now what we're going to do is take the slicing knife and we're going to cut the chicken breast in half horizontally. Okay, we want to go pretty much right through the middle of it if we can. Okay, so it'll give us 2 pieces that should be mirror images of each other. Okay, we're going to do that with each one of the chicken breasts that we're using. I find it easier to start at the thicker end of the breast. Okay, now I've taken the cutting board and I have covered it with plastic wrap. Now what we want to do is lay the chicken breasts on the plastic wrap. We want to put a nice space between them. If you're doing 3 breasts, you'll probably have to do this in 2 separate batches. Now what we want to do is cover the chicken breasts with plastic wrap. Now this is 12-inch wide plastic wrap. You can actually buy this in a wider width so that you can cover your cutting board with 1 piece rather than 2. But whatever works. Okay. Cover them, fold the plastic wrap under the board. All right, now we're going to pound them gently. Okay, we want them to be about 1/4 of an inch thick, uniform thickness all the way. All right, so roughly about 1/4 of an inch thick. Now this narrower end, that's already 1/4 of an inch, but we're going to just pound it gently, spread it out. We want to finish with pieces that are about a uniform thickness. Now what does this do? This gives you a uniform piece of chicken, uniform thickness, and also pounding any protein tenderizes it. And also we want to try to get them to be roughly the same size. Okay, now we want to pull back the top layer of plastic. You see, I'm kind of pulling it back and rolling it in on itself so I don't contaminate the whole area with chicken. Okay, now what we want to do is very lightly season the this side of the chicken. Okay, next we want to take our compound chèvre and spread it on the chicken. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to divide up what I have here among these 4 pieces. Now there's enough here to do 3 breasts, total of 6 pieces, but I'm just going to use a little bit extra on each one here and use it all up. Okay, the next thing we want to do is take our mushrooms and scatter them over the top. Again, there's enough here to do 6. You can either, if you're doing 6, you've got enough to do 6. If you're doing less than that, you can either put on some extra, or you can save some for some other use. I'm just going to use it all up here. All right, then we want to do the same thing with the apricots. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to roll and tie them. I'm going to cut some pieces of the string first, about 1 foot long. Okay, you want to do 2 pieces for each one of the roulades that you're doing, about 1 foot long. Okay, then we want to roll them up. Okay, now I'm going to start with the narrow end, and I'm going to just roll it and I'm going to do that with each one. This one, it doesn't seem like one end is more narrow than the other, but this one does have kind of a split in it. So I'm starting to roll that end first. Then we're going to tie them. Put a piece of string underneath at one end and snug it down, not too tight. You don't want to cut into the flesh too much. And put one on each end of each roulade. All right, now we're going to brush them with some olive oil, and then we're going to season them on the outside lightly. Now, if you're using a sheet pan and not a silpat, you want to oil your sheet pan at this point. I'm using a silpat, so we're going to place the roulades onto the silpat, and I like to have the knots facing upward. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put this into the 350-degree oven and roast it for 15 to 20 minutes. We're going to roast until it just starts to take on some color. Okay, the roulades were in the oven for 15 minutes. You can see they're starting to take on some color, okay? So what I've done is I've added a little bit of oil to the pan here, so we have roughly a little over a tablespoon in the pan. And we're gonna add these roulades, and we're gonna brown them. We've got a nice brown on this side, you see? Okay, we're going to turn them over now, around the other side. Okay, they're nice and brown on the other side as well. Actually, not as much brown there. You know what? I'm going to give them a little bit more time. Press them down into the pan a little bit. See what they look like. Oh yeah, they look nice. They look nice. Okay, it is time to plate. Okay, time to plate. What we're going to do is take each roulade and snip the kitchen twine. Remove the twine. Okay, then we're going to slice them diagonally. See if they're done. Yeah, perfectly done. All right. Now, I'll try to get all this on the camera, okay? We're going to take some arugula. Just put a little bit of arugula on the plate. Arrange the roulades artfully on the plate. Garnish with chives. And there we have it. This is lesson 82, chicken roulade with apricots, mushrooms, and Chevre. You can see photos of the final dish at my Instagram, which is at Chef's Apprentice, Cook Like a Pro. Next up is New York strip with mushrooms. New York strip with mushroom, asparagus, and prosciutto flan. Please remember to subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching.